Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and we're here to interview the game changers, the future makers, the co-collaborators and creators who are here to collaborate with one another towards a better future for all of us. Enjoy the show. We've got a great guest coming up for you right now. We're going to be on Facebook, and I'm going to go ahead and share it so that people can see you.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So it was just really good for me to kind of get tuned back in. Didn't post anything. I journaled a lot, really got back in my creative flow and made a lot of decisions about just the direction of my life and business and lots of good stuff. So it was very positive.
Nice.
Things have been really good.
And you were in Bali the whole time? You went to China? I saw that.
Yeah,
was really rad.
I ended up going to the Philippines for like 2 days, and then I wanted to see the Great Wall, so I spent 1 day there.
Oh, right on.
I wanted to spend more time in China, but I didn't like it, to be honest, so I left.
Yeah, China's a hard place to be, I found.
I was not really a fan. It was so different than Bali. And it was interesting, when I stayed in the Philippines, my intuition was like screaming at me saying, don't go to China. And I hadn't gotten a visa. I was only going to be there for less than 72 hours, so I figured it didn't matter at all. But they were making a weird thing because I hadn't booked my flight out of there. So just my intuition was saying, don't go. And I went anyway. I forced myself to go, and it's like, you know what? You need to start listening to that intuition.
Yeah, brother. Your gut can process so much more information. Your heart and your spirit know so much more than your mind will ever know. And as Tony's apt to say, I don't argue or reason with my mind. I just, live in my flow, my heart. And I find when I do that, life expands. And when I don't, and I get in my head, I'm dead. So, Eli, I just want to tell the guys at home, and everybody watching live on Facebook, I see you over here. If you want to add a comment, you want to ask a question of Eli. Eli is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life. I want to tell you why. Eli has spent many years of his life mastering the art of different things, both his physical body, his mental and physical state, his emotional state, working for men like Tony Robbins. He sold more Tony Robbins than anybody in that company besides Tony Robbins, and that's only because Tony's been at it longer. 40 years now. He's been mentored personally by Tony. He's traveled the world with Tony. He's a phenomenal individual and human being. And what I like the most about Eli is that he comes from a place of complete service. Like, he literally beats his body to a pulp a lot of times at the behest of myself and others. Like, we always are like, Eli, you got to take a break. You got to take a break. So you're finally back from Bali and refreshed. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling compared to how you felt? Let's kick it off with that question.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so important. And especially as entrepreneurs, they're talking a lot now about adrenal fatigue and burnout. And, it's like, and I love the bulletproof coffee. I love all that, but there's, really a downside to it. The intermittent fasting, it's good. You can really, juice a lot, and you're running on nerve energy, but those stores, that Jing energy, that deep down energy, it needs to be replenished. And, I love the bulletproof coffee, but drinking coffee every day in massive amounts, probably not the best for you. But being on the road, I've done over 3,000 seminars for Tony, and we all have off days, but when you're the guy that's on every single day, 6 days a week, you can't just sit there in a chair on stage and just say, hey, today guys, I'm not really feeling it. There's a certain responsibility that comes with that, and that push can really be draining. Tony obviously has a team of people working on him nonstop, which is nice. I don't quite have that luxury yet, but I'm putting those pieces in place now. And the Bali piece really solidified a lot of those things that I'm going to do as far as the standard of health that I'm going to keep for myself, regardless of environment, regardless of support system. So it's so key. And for some people, their morning routine might have meditation, might have some walk or yoga. But when we get stressed, sometimes the first thing that gets cut out of our routine is the time with ourselves. So it's so important because once we start making sacrifices, those little ones of our health, how we eat, how we sleep, it just becomes a snowball effect, and it can really mess you up.
100%. And, I know you've had issues in the past with adrenal fatigue and different, back stuff. And it's just like your body really breaks down. And I can see somebody who puts so much energy and gives so much just kind of get to a place where, you almost hit a wall, right? And that could be a really dangerous thing. And I think your ability to push yourself might even eclipse your ability to really dish out physically, like literally what your body is capable of, right? And as we all get older, I think we start to recognize our limits. There's always stuff you can do to increase your energy and your capacity and your attention and all these different things. But at the end of the day, we're still human beings. We have to like kind of respect our limits. And the one way you mentioned to kind of up those limits and to get more leverage is to begin to build a team around you. So transitioning into that, you're one of the best leaders, influencers, persuaders, salespeople I've ever met. I mean, you sell, tons and tons from stage and different ways. What are some of the key leadership principles that you rely on or that you consistently come back to, or maxims that you'd like to share with us right now? Because I'm always asking this question. I love it.
Well, I think the main job of the leader is to lead. So that means they take charge. And I think in order to take charge and really be able to influence people at a large level, you have to know your outcome. And I think sometimes we get lost in our outcome. I know I've had situations in my life where I talk to mentors about it, where something didn't go my way. There was maybe an argument with a person and I wanted to be right. I wanted to prove that person wrong, or I wanted to prove this, or I wanted to do that. But really my outcome was just to have success in this certain business venture. It wasn't to prove this or that. And I think that sometimes not knowing our outcome, not being so tied to it, we can get a little bit off. Or we see all these different opportunities or Facebook ads, and there's some new venture, or there's cryptocurrency. There's all these things that can pull our attention some way. And we do need to be flexible in our approach, to know, like, if it's financial security, if it's taking our company. Most people, their outcome isn't specific enough. But when you're really dialed into your vision, you have this clear outcome for your day, for your month, for your year, for your life, your legacy. You realize there are ways to get you there that just aren't about the money or whatever, but it's about communication. And I think that's the main thing. One of the main things I've learned from Tony and from NLP is these language patterns where you can take some information, and the analogy Tony always talks about is of a keto. It's like energy coming at you, and you don't try to force the energy or block it. You use the energy. And somebody coming at you, you could break their arm or their leg or something like that with almost none of your own energy. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to be able to take whatever is coming at you and use it to fulfill your outcome. But sometimes we get a little bit off in our own ego or our own distraction. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is being able to take whatever you have and utilize it. So utilization is the actual word or term that would be used in NLP. Utilizing what's in your environment to support your outcome.
And I might be butchering this quote, but it brings to mind Viktor Frankl. He talked about how, between response and stimulus, there's a space. And in that space, our destiny is decided, right? You can react to things and just kind of snap judgment. I'm guilty of this myself from time to time. Or you could take that moment to decide how to respond. And that life really, is made or broken right there. It's like, how are you going to respond? And no matter what happens to you, you have the opportunity to step up and decide to be, a better leader and learn from those lessons and consistently get better over time. So can you give us an example or two about a time in your life when, maybe you've been up against the wall or had a challenge? I know you've had a lot of different issues, and you can choose which story you want to tell, but I think for the listeners at home, it really helps to ground who you are as a man now at age, what are you, 38 now?
39.
39.
All grown up.
Yeah, brother. And that's always, evolving. We're always constantly shifting and changing. And I know my own self, like even 6 months ago, I had a different viewpoint on life, and I'm always learning and growing, surrounding myself with peak performers in order to do that. What are some of the things that you wish you knew at 29, for example, that you now know at 39, and what would you have done differently if you could go back?
I think a lot of it for me, the things that I've really come to grips with, and this isn't from an ego place, but just really owning my power. And looking back 10 years ago, and it's so, we hear these things over and over again, and they're so cliche, but there's a reason these cliches have been around for like 1,000 years, and people say these things, but just believing in yourself has been the biggest thing. And I've had just glimpses of myself, even in the past, I'd say a couple of years, where I just was at a mirror, or I watched a video of myself, and I was like, wow, that was really good. And so I think just this self-acknowledgement, and there is a piece of self-development that we want to better ourselves. We want to develop ourselves, but that is often built upon the pretense that there's something wrong with us. People that are like, a happy girl doesn't look in the mirror and say, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. It's not, so there's this authenticity that's lacking in some self-development, these lies that there's something wrong with us. And so we go to these seminars and we go to these places to get filled back up, but that can become an addiction in itself. Yes. I've been to many of Tony Robbins events, but then I go to Landmark and I've been to all these things, but I noticed I would see certain people there over and over and over again coming back. And it's great to get your boost, but a lot of times that can become an addiction. And so the point is this: I think that I looking back, realizing that I was so strong on my own. And I started to, before I ever even heard of Tony, I read Think and Grow Rich. And that book really shifted things for me. And before I even knew about morning routines, I was doing high intensity interval training and sprinting up the street, doing affirmations, just really dialed into my own intuition. I was doing a lot of the things that are talked about so much now. And I had no mentors or no references in my life, but I was really dialed in with that intuition. And one of the main things that I've gotten from my time with Tony has been just this aspect of conditioning. And so there are aspects of our life, our business, our relationships that we might not like, ourselves, that place that our mind goes sometimes when we're a little off, but anything can become conditioned. And so that was the difference between NLP and what we call NAC, neuro-associative conditioning, instead of programming. We can't really program ourselves because we all have natural tendencies and we all have information coming into this supercomputer, but we can condition anything. And just like conditioning our muscles, we can condition our mind, we condition our hearts, we can condition ourselves. And going back to what you said about the Viktor Frankl quote, that space between the stimulus and response, we can condition that to be wider through meditation, but also we can anticipate. So there's this stimulus and we get to choose our response. So if I see that looking back in my day, my month, my year, my decade, that I have consistently acted in a certain way when things got tight or when somebody said no to me. So a lot of times when a salesperson, for example, hears the word no, they have a certain pattern of focus. They focus on their past where it didn't work. Their physiology changes. They have a physiology or a tension in their body where even if they're saying the right things, there's a stress. They're like, you're not going to buy? There's a stress in their voice. So a physiology, and then there's a pattern of language. And so literally when we break down our responses, we can choose different responses. So the long answer here that I'm saying is basically what I've really become aware of is that we can choose how we respond in any situation and really being aware. One of the things that I have changed that I wouldn't say was like a major stumbling block or a major challenge for me is just eating. I have a huge, massive sweet tooth. I love ice cream. But I noticed one day that I don't have these cravings at 2 p.m. I don't have these cravings at 8 a.m. It's like this zone from like 9 p.m. to like midnight. I'm like, my environment, I'm triggered somewhere. So there's stimulus response. So there's things in my environment. There's times a day, things happening to my blood sugar, things happening that are triggering me to eat the whole pint of Ben & Jerry's every single night.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah, so I know I got these danger zones, and it's not about saying, hey, I'm never going to eat ice cream again because I love it, but there's certain times where I'm going to it as a go-to to get myself out of stress, or it's just a distraction. And so realizing that, setting the game up of life to win, I have to realize that there's certain places my mind goes at certain times of the year, certain times of the day. And so how do I create an environment that supports myself? And so making sure that any change in our life is ecologically sound, because you can go to the seminar and get all pumped up. You can spend an hour with the personal trainer. You can spend an hour with your success coach. But when he's not there, what's happening? And so we need to make sure that we set the game up to win, to make sure that our environment supports us. And that could be, at 7 p.m. I take a bath, or I go for a walk, or I start breathing, or I do meditation. So I do something else, because we can't just break a habit. We have to replace it with something. So there's been habits of things that I did, self-destructive habits, things that I, just crazy weekends of binge drinking. And so I think it's just really been setting the game up in my life to win, and realizing, looking back, that we all create our worlds, having 1,000% responsibility to be able to respond. And no matter what life is throwing at us, we can respond and we can choose. If we really get into the gap, Wayne Dyer talks about that, getting into the gap, we can choose this different response. And no matter what life throws at us, we can choose a better response. And I love Mother Teresa's quote on that. She said, God doesn't throw anything at us that we can't handle. But she says, sometimes I wish he didn't trust me so much. So we've all got that. And that's, life is the best personal trainer. And so we really have to realize that it's happening, not only, as Tony says, or, a lot of self-development people say life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me, but it's also happening because of me. It's happening by me. Like I'm doing this in some way. So even taking responsibility for things that are out of our control can really put us in a place of control. And going back to your original question, that's what leaders do. They take responsibility even when they're not at fault.
Absolutely. And extreme ownership is a quality which I've been surrounding myself with a lot of really wonderful special operators, guys that have been in the forces for 20 years. I've actually been training, this, at Mark Devine's SEAL Fit. And Mark, I haven't really conversed with him too much, but we've been chatting a little bit. Just a really brilliant coach. And he's been showing me like what I'm doing wrong with my lifts and stuff like that. So that's been wonderful. Kyle Durand, who I want to give a shout out to, is just one of the best humans I've ever met. Like it would be impressive enough that he was a Navy SEAL for 20 years and retired recently as a commander. But, by the way, he's also a lawyer and a doctor. He's got a PhD in tax law. Oh, and by the way, he runs Iditarod races on foot, 350 miles through the snow with no dog sleds. It's like he carries his own stuff and he saved somebody's life doing it. Like these are the people that allow you to show up. Oh, and American Ninja Warrior almost won that too. It's just a crazy, amazing person where it's like, where do you get there? Like nobody can ever make a comparison to that. If you made a comparison to that type of person, it would totally steal your thunder or totally steal your joy. But guess what? They're at chapter 64. Maybe I'm at like chapter 24 or 34. I'm not at chapter 4 anymore, but I don't want people to get that comparison piece in their way, right? Don't look at Eli and say, oh, I'm never going to sell that much or do the things that he does in leadership and influence and persuasion, because that's his gift and his path that he's chose. Like that's his skill tree. I sent out a great video yesterday about how life can be equated to a video game. That's the skill tree. I saw it. Wasn't that so cool? I thought that was really well done.
Amazing.
So I guess this is all to say, guys, is like, where you're at is beautiful and where you're going is also beautiful, but don't get stuck in the chasm of despair in between then and now. Just focus on that 1% better every day and get really clear on your outcome of what you want to master. And it will happen sooner than you think because you're compounding, right? In a year, 365% is not the number. It's 3,778% if you just focus on getting 1% better every single day. So it's a really,
and I just want to add something to that. It's like, it's amazing. I took a picture at Leadership with Mark Devine. He spoke there. And, I live in Los Angeles and I've been in a room with literally every celebrity. Like I can't think of any celebrity I haven't been around or been at a dinner with. And I never ask for pictures. I never like, hey, let's do this thing. There's a few, like Tony for me, when I met him was like, oh my God, it's Tony. And Mark Devine, same thing. And I think it's really important for the listener, for entrepreneurs to realize this is that I think as a society, we're really craving for truth and what's real. And actors, they're acting. That's not who they are. It's amazing that the fact that they can switch from person to person, but there are superstars. There are amazing people. There are rock stars walking among us. And the rock star of today is the entrepreneur. I was at Ryan Blair's house. I don't know if you know who he is. He wrote a book recently called Rock Bottom to Rockstar. And he was just talking about that. Like the entrepreneur today, Elon Musk, Gary Vaynerchuk, all these guys talking about business, it's real. And there's guys like Mark Devine. There's people that do epic things in the world and they're real human beings. And, having my 15 minutes of fame here, I was, on a billboard in Times Square. I had a few things here and there, but the piece that I didn't get, and that's one of the things I go back to. At 23, I moved to Los Angeles. At 24, it's a long story how it came to be, but I was, possibly cast to be Superman. And it was me and a bunch of people. It might still not have happened, but, I was really caught up in that acting world. And it was like a chance that I could be a movie star. And the guy who I developed a very good friendship with, and I'm friends with a lot of actors, a lot of agents and managers, the people to know here. And, for years they said that door is open to you whenever you want. And they can't guarantee you're going to be a celebrity. I know people that book stuff all the time, that working actors, they're not rich by any means, and they work their butt off. And, that door was always open to me. But it's interesting now that life doesn't even seem like it would have been optimal for me. And actually, somebody I was coaching years ago, I, ended up developing a really good relationship with, and he said, that Superman role, it's like when you get to be a celebrity, and a lot of us as kids, I know for myself, I felt like my dad didn't really pay attention to me sometimes, but he would pay attention to movies like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we see that. And I remember thinking to myself unconsciously that if I was famous or if I was on TV, then people would pay attention to me, love me, and I would get this attention. But now with the internet and now with YouTube, this guy that I was coaching, he says, you have the capacity to actually help more people than you ever could have. There's a guy that I learned NLP with, study with, Steve Linder. I know stories of him of, a kid not speaking for 2 years because he had sexual trauma. And Steve spending an hour with his child, and now he speaks. The kids from the, different shootings and things like that. He'll go in there. The FBI will have Steve go in and literally within hours change people's lives. Tony Robbins is a very known example, but there are thousands of people out there that have the ability to change people's lives, like really change their life, not just get a selfie with them. Like there's some famous person, not putting those people down. There's obviously people like Leonardo DiCaprio that are really trying to use their fame to catapult them to have some kind of change in the world. But we don't need that. They took the long way to get there. And I think the important message of what I'm saying is that I didn't realize so long ago, now more than ever, we all have the capacity to be real life superheroes to people, that change people's lives, to actually create sustainable businesses that give back, that do something to inspire people to really be that message. And I just think it's such a beautiful time. I wish that I had owned that more in my life. And this whole aspect of entrepreneurship, I grew up in a, lower income household, and, being an employee has always been the way, somebody telling me what to do. But setting your own schedule, creating something, having people relying on you, having customers and clients, I think it's an amazing thing. And we've all got that opportunity now. So hopefully that kind of answers the question.
And you're part of that, Eli. Everybody's kind of like an Avenger, right? In a way, like I live in a community with a lot of these really great speakers and authors, and they're all doing their thing together. It's a beautiful thing, and they're all going to be fine regardless. Like, the Alexi Panoses of the world, and
I was just thinking that I'm going to their seminar this weekend.
Yeah, they're beautiful people. Marcy Locke's down here. We got Peter Scott, the Fearless Life Academy. You got Mike Sherbick, Greatness Foundation. Like all these wonderful people I bounce off all the time. We're all buddies, right? We all hang out. And I see us all doing well separately, and we're all going to be fine separately. But I think any gendered relationship is when you can be okay and I'm okay and you're okay. But when we come together, we're greater than the sum of our parts.
Yeah.
I think we really have an opportunity to be that kind of like Avengers squad that goes out and it's like, I'm fighting perceived scarcity. Peter's after irrational fear. Mike wants to keep people from playing small, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I could be the Nick Fury of that, right? The make more marbles guy, this crazy dude who's got an idea. Why don't we all come together and make more than we ever could have alone? And our business will still thrive separately, but we have this collaborative maybe that can really shift on a big level. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of people affected in various different ways. And we can kind of funnel the different traffic and offers or whatever to serve more people at a higher level, however we wish. So, I'm not typically a person who would enroll on a live Facebook call, but would that be something you would be interested in?
Absolutely. Yeah,
all right.
Definitely.
For that for sure. So yeah, that's, I think, where this is all going, right? We could all do well on our own, and we could all be our little celebrities in our own little bubbles. But what if we came together for a real shift, right? Because we already have the resources. We already have the food. We create more food in this country, for example, in a day that would feed the world for a week, and we waste most of it. We don't distribute it. Energy is being solved. We could already get enough solar in the Sahara Desert to power the world. We just need the batteries and distribution. Clean water. You got guys like the Billions and Chains guy, the 5-hour energy guy, Vinaj, I think his name is.
Yeah. I saw that video. Amazing.
He could put a barge out in the ocean and start pumping in fresh water that's desalinated, ready to drink. It's kind of incredible. And then finally, like I was just in China and you were too, they're building skyscrapers, cities full of skyscrapers next to homeless people living in poverty. And there's nobody living in these skyscrapers. There's more shelter, more food, more water, more energy than ever before. But now our beliefs need to shift. We have the ability, but now we need the responsibility, to quote yourself, to go ahead and really make those shifts and to make, capitalism not just be a zero-sum game, but a more abundant everybody wins kind of game. And we have a lot of really smart people talking about universal basic income. What is your take on all of that? And what do you think the key drivers or the key tipping points that will allow us to get to a more abundant world?
Well, I think it's happening, and it's happening quicker than people think. I mean, the way the technology, I was living in the Bay Area last 4 months last year, and I went to a lot of a friend of mine two of my friends were attending Singularity University. And the one, not where you have to pay to go, but the one where they choose like one person from each country. So it was like 80 kids, mostly in their 20s from all over the world. I went to a lot of lectures, and at the graduation, Peter Diamandis spoke, Ray Kurzweil, and just talking about what's really happening, like not someday, but now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's happening. And I think it's inevitable. Not to get too political or like dark force out there. There are a lot of entities that have profited from kind of keeping people down and, maintaining power. You could
separate, afraid, and not collaborating, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, there's a lot of institutions, but even looking at the water, looking at energy, looking at cryptocurrencies, it's like the people are kind of taking the power back. And, it's just, everything's kind of a cluster right now, but out of chaos comes order. We have the most divided time our nation's ever been in. A lot of power is shifting to the people. So I think it's a really great thing. While I was in Bali, I'm actually investing in it's a resort there called the Oasis. A lot of celebrities are attached. I think Tom Cruise has bought one of the pieces there. But it's going to have its own landing script. It's going to have Bhumi Sehas. She's the CNN Person of the Year. She's a midwife for people that want to go there and give birth. There's going to be all sorts of permaculture. So I think it's really about people just kind of taking their own power back, planting their own food. And when we look at the food and the drug industry, these companies they're the same company. The companies that are poisoning us are trying to sell us the drugs to heal us back, giving us drugs to make us buy more drugs. So I think people are becoming really, really aware, really, really conscious. And I think it's changing everything. What's one of the side projects that I'm talking about later today is bringing this aspect of what I learned there, this health and social reform to Los Angeles and creating like a tonic bar, but something that would stay open to maybe midnight for healthy people that want to be social, where they can drink tonics and teas, really, really good herbs that heal them, because people want to be social and talk about these things. And typically it's been coffee shops, and coffee is, it's poison, really acidic. Doesn't matter how much butter you put in it. You look at a person that's drank coffee for 30 years versus somebody that just had green juice for 30 years, different skin, different, blood, just a whole different energy field.
Earmuffs. I love coffee. Oh, I gave up everything.
Me too. So it's a treat every once in a while. But yeah, creating some of these like tonic bars and things that make people feel really good, high vibe things. So in that space where people are vibing high, connected to nature, putting really good things in their body, garbage in, garbage out, good stuff in, good stuff out. So I think it's about creating community around that. And that's, I think it's happening. More and more people are realizing there's such a need. And the people that have always been doing that stuff in the past were like hippies talking about this stuff, free love and all that. But now there's a way where the entrepreneur has had these visions, and they're doing it, and it's societally conscious. And have you studied any the spiral dynamics?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
It's like how we evolve consciously. It's survival, then tribal leader, then rules-based system, then achievement. And then a lot of people, once they hit achievement, they get to this place of like what's called level 5 or orange. They're like made all their money.
Yeah, orange is like achiever, and then green is the next phase after that.
Yeah, societally conscious is where people start doing yoga. They made the money, and they're kind of like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
They start to they lose some of their drive because they're so focused on giving. But the next level is the next level above that, where somebody has the drive of the 5 to achieve, but not to achieve for themselves, but they got this level of achievement, but they're still societally conscious. The best example right now is in Elon Musk. He's doing things, he's working his butt off, but he's got enough money, and he's doing it for some other reason. And he's not doing it to show off or any of that stuff. You really feel there's a mission in that man, and things are shifting pretty quick. Jamie Wheel wrote that book not too long ago, Stealing Fire. Really great concept. And Stephen Coulter with the book Rise of Superman, talking about, yeah, there you go, about superhuman performance. And in those books like Rise of Superman, they talk about how, say, 30 years ago, if somebody was downhill skiing, there it is, about how somebody might move their body in the air, rotate 180 degrees and 360 degrees. So, what is that, like 500 or somebody would rotate 700 degrees in the air while going downhill on a bicycle or whatever. And then it was like every few years, it'd be like 20% or 5% increase. But now people are doing like 5 spins and 8 flips in the same amount of time, getting into that zone, getting into that flow state. And so people are doing the research right now. And these people that are doing the research, they're backed financially with people who have the means to really make something happen. And they're kind of like, what? None of us are going to be here 100 years from now. Maybe some of us will. But they're just kind of like, hey, I want to do something super cool. And it's awesome. And with things like video and conversations like this, more and more people are becoming aware. And whatever we focus on expands. So we're constantly focusing. We're focusing like a laser beam. And the collective consciousness has hit this point, that target, that outcome, as we started talking about, clear in the outcome of really doing things, not for personal gain. Most people have in the past they've had an outcome to be successful, but it was success for self or to be powerful because they wanted to control people, or they wanted to be right or righteous, instead of like, what's the bigger picture here? What's really going on? And it's happening faster now than I can even imagine. While I was in Bali, and I continue to surround myself with young entrepreneurs. I'm 39 now, which certainly isn't old, but being around kids that are in their early 20s or mid 20s, they've grown up for 20 years with the internet. And so they've seen, and they've had positive messages beat into them if they had the right role models and parents around them, giving them the right stuff. The bad stuff is there too, but I never had access to information like that. If I didn't know how to spell a word, I had to go to a dictionary, or ask somebody, or, if I didn't know something, now I can just Google, and it's amazing. The information that's there, you can learn with a YouTube video. And, it's interesting going into high level influence, or to get in shape, or to make $1 million. The interesting thing is because familiarity breeds contempt. So the law of familiarity says when we get so much, for free information, we tend to take it for advantage. You don't take it for granted a little bit. And so some people have just kind of done nothing with it, this amazing opportunity, but some people have really, they've become it. They've not only taken advantage of it, it's just become part of their routine. They become habituated where their mind, their whole sense of being is really on a different level. And so young people, I had lunch yesterday with a really successful entrepreneur in the self-development space. And he's 26 years old. He's going to make like $100,000 this month. Amazing. And so he's somebody that I've mentored a bit. And so I'm asking him, what have you done to switch so quickly from nothing to 100K in a month within the last year, 18 months? And so it's just fascinating how people are able to pick up on these patterns of thought, patterns of business, patterns of communication, patterns of scale so much quicker than, we ever would have before.
It's a beautiful thing. And you dug into a lot of really key things. It's like pulling the threads on a sweater. And I want to get to a few of those threads. But one of the things you mentioned was the access to and ubiquitous information, right? Savannah, for example, is a young woman I've been mentoring for the last year, and she's an incredible part of the team. She's really grown into her own. She already kind of knew that she wanted to be an entrepreneur, but she went and did the college thing for a while, and now she's back out of it. And she's constantly telling me stories of people she meets that are younger than her. She's 19. She's meeting 16, 17-year-olds that have made $1 million. It's insane because the access to information, and you don't have all those bad habits and all that programming you got to do like we did, allows you to do that more quickly. And then the other piece you mentioned is collaboration over competition, right? Is like, we can come together and we're greater than the sum of our parts. I'm rereading some Darwin. I just bought all of his books, which are just awesome reads if you haven't read them.
Late reading there.
But he talks about and I was just confirming this because my friend Jake Doucette just said, hey, he talks about cooperation more than he talks about competition in Origin of Species. I'm like, that's really fascinating because we're always told that survival of the fittest is the only way. And a couple things he says that are really fascinating. He says, one, that natural selection happens so slowly and over many generations that it's really not an effect that we need to worry about in our lives, right? So survival of the fittest, is kind of like, that's going to take several hundred years for that to really matter. But in the right now, in the here and now, the tribes and the civilizations and the species that do survive and tribes within tribes are the ones that collaborate. And it's a really fascinating take that is coming from the man himself. He was saying that 150 years ago, but we've been given the message of we need to compete with each other and that only the strong survive, which is miss the point of what he was saying. It was that tribes that collaborate and share information do better, live longer, they learn things faster, and they can create more for everybody. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you ever seen the movie, I think it's 21 Jump Street?
The new one with the,
Channing Tatum, yeah. It's an awesome movie, but these guys are like, they're, just like the original TV show with Johnny Depp, they're cops that go back to high school to like try to infiltrate these drugs. But it's interesting with Channing Tatum and the guy that's, the other guy, I forget his name, really, really funny guy.
Jonah Hill.
Yes. They go back, and the time that they were in high school, it was all about, they go there with like a Camaro, and they're like tough football guy, and the cool kids were like the tough guys. And going back to how we've been conditioned to think about survival of the fittest, like this physical thing, even like 100 years ago, even 20 years ago, when I was in high school, it was kind of like the cool guys were the football jock and the tough guy. But they came back there, and they're like, the cool kids are like on computers and they got nice apples and they're really intelligent and they have, articulation. It's not about beating people up. So it's interesting how this time of the entrepreneur, this time of people being educated, and what really makes us have this higher value isn't how much we bench press or how much money we make. It's our ability to create change with our mindset and our psychology. So it's become so much more attractive from a survivalistic standpoint, where even, girls in this movie weren't just attracted to the good-looking guy or the physical guy. It was the guy that had wit. And I wrote a long Facebook post on this, I think yesterday, about, just influence. Because those people that, going back to survival of the fittest, they were trying to influence their environment where they could be in the power. But the power has gone from a physical thing to a mental thing. And what's going to last through our life is this ability to influence. First, it's influencing ourselves. Then it's influencing one-to-one, one-to-many, to really understand, to really pull ourselves out of the environment, have the 30,000-foot view of our life, our business, what's really going on, not only the 30,000-foot view today, but also across time, to see how our actions, how our words, how our copywriting is going to affect others. Because when you put something on the internet, be it a video or a piece of copy, it's there forever. And some of these youngsters out there taking like, naked selfies or whatever they're, some of these people are doing, like,
that's
hey,
part of the public record forever. That might as well be on the blockchain. It's locked in. Yeah.
There's also a downside to that if you're doing crazy things. I mean, everybody's
yes, and only assuming that the perception doesn't shift, right? I think people, just like CBD is becoming more acceptable and marijuana is becoming more acceptable, like the old stodgy, I want to hoard all the water and forget everybody else. That kind of stuff is going away. I think, with this new generation, they're starting to understand that they need to be adaptable and collaborative, and they need to focus on intelligence and being able to make shifts really quickly. And that it's not cool anymore to be the downer, right? That judges people for, their sexuality or whatever, right? Yeah. It's silly. And like, it's anachronistic. And when you look at the news, it's like, oh, that's what everybody thinks. No, it's not what everybody thinks. Trust me. I'm grateful and blessed to live with, 3 young women. And what I'm realizing is that the future is feminine. It's influence. It's persuasion. It's not this masculine, I'm going to change the world to suit me. It's this feminine, I'm going to learn to flow with the world and to affect a bigger change on a larger level. Kind of similar to when they give money to warlords and, to the men of the communities, and when they're rebuilding tribes in Africa and things like that, it's just spent on more carnage and destruction. But when they give it to the women, they invest in agriculture, they invest in schools, they invest in infrastructure, and then the men come back and chill out. really,
Yeah.
and they can rebuild their society. So it's like this masculine, feminine. I'm not saying men or women specifically. It's that masculine or feminine energy that we bring to things that needs to have a balance that will heal the world, because, Gaia is feminine, if you will. And I know this got a little bit esoteric, but I think that's really true. Is like, I'm noticing in my own life, the more I flow instead of hustle, the more I'm able to actually affect and change. And it's not even me doing anything. It's me showing up in a way that effortlessly creates that outcome or that result.
100%. Yeah. It is the time of the feminine. And this is very true. I heard that years ago that things were switching, but it's amazing that just in our lifetimes, how quickly things have changed. And it's going to continue. So,
well, Kurzweil nailed it. It's the exponential curve, right? It's going to infinity very quickly because we're no longer, going on the linear line. We're going on the exponential compounding line. It's going to go faster than we can even manage. Yes, sir. So, who do you really follow? Like, who do you really look up to as thought leadership? Like, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I've been loving Tim Urban's post on Wait But Why about like how he changes the world. Like the Elon Musk changed the world with a company formula where he creates new industries and makes, a lot of supply and demand so that people take his vision and run with it to, create electric cars and things like that. Like, who are some of the people that really light you up and excite you that are really doing big things in the world? And can you share one or two lessons that you've kind of shifted recently?
Sure, but first I'll say this, kind of alluding to what I started with. I have been in my life just really, especially the past 12, 15 years, a student of self-development. But it was predicated upon the fact that I needed to get mentors, that I didn't have these strong male role models in my life. And so I've put myself in environments to do that. And I've consumed, from the time I'd wake up, I'd listen to audiobooks and I'd read books, and I'm consuming. And then even the things that I would produce to put out to the world were often tainted with that energy of Tony Robbins or this or that, highly influenced. And the interesting thing is this, and I've taken a couple months off of posting, like I said, and putting really anything out there, because I think that we've been taught to better ourselves, and leaders are readers, and like to always be consuming content. But the challenge with that is I was consuming so much and starting to produce things, really in the flow, taking things on, assimilating it, putting it out there with my own flavor on it. But it was still affected by what I was taking in from somebody else's life experiences. So I lost really the ability to hear my own voice. And I think that it's so powerful to be able to hear our own voice. And my voice was so muffled, so stifled by the voice of so-called experts. And in personal development, when you listen to any Brian Tracy or any of these guys that talk about how you need to read a book, a week, or read for an hour. So that thought process gets us to buy more books and things like that. And I think it's great. I think we all need to buy books, but every single person I know has an entire bookshelf of 90% of the books they haven't read yet. Or they've got all this information. And really, I'm going to finish my book in the next probably couple months, but it's all about that aspect of really making shifts. And the times that I've had the biggest breakthroughs in my life, I go through a process, and my time in Bali was this. It's this aspect of, my book's going to be called THIN. It stands for Transforming Human Nature, THN. And so it's, even taking the I out, not focusing on ourselves, but it's really putting something of ourselves out into the world. And it's really getting rid of everything, thinning things out from what we consume, because the most successful people in the world aren't just consumers, they're producers. They don't just read books, they write books. They're producing things, but it's based off their own life experience. And we're all going to have challenges. And so what I've really been dialing into lately has been my own genius inside of me. And we've all got that. Mm-hmm. But I think that there are people out there that have obviously come before all of us, but every single person has had experiences. Every single person has genius within them. And there's ways that we filter information through this meat suit, through this brain, that we get distinctions from that are gold nuggets for our lives. And I think that a lot of people, when I've listened to other podcasts and I've listened to other interviews and I've listened to other books, you start to recognize patterns. And it's interesting, working for Tony for so long, I met a lot of people that don't like Tony Robbins. They hate him. And they, some of it's maybe their ego, some of it they feel that he's the one that's so famous, so he's more significant than them, and it makes them feel threatened or whatever. But they don't like his stuff, and they say, oh, I listen to this person. And then I listen to these people's training, and it sounds just like Tony. And so a lot of the information out there gets rehashed, and it's a few distinctions from NLP. It's some distinctions from Tony, from Jim Rohn, some basic stuff on persistence and goal setting and Think and Grow Rich. And it's these things that get rehashed over and over again. But I think that Tim Ferriss, who is somebody that I do look to, I think he really made a shift when he created the book 4-Hour Workweek, where the original self-development text was the Bible, or you could go as far back to the Tao Te Ching, or one of these classic texts that really got people to be the Bhagavad Gita, any of these books that look at dealing with life situations like Arjuna, like what he went through with his family, where we draw off knowledge from other people. So I think it's really about looking at the classic examples, because the analogy is this: if there is some water, like say on top of the mountain, there's some snow up there melting. It becomes water and it goes down the mountain into the stream. You can drink that water, that fresh water from at the top where it's melted pure snow, or you can wait till that water melts and trickles all the way down the mountain, goes into a river, and horses drink out of it, and maybe people wash their clothes in it. It gets other people bathe in it, and then you're all the way upstream drinking that water. That water has been tainted and polluted. So information is the same way. So I think that we really need to look to the source of that information, the source on top of the mountain. But in order to get to the mountain, we have to climb the mountain. And that is not always easy. That is sometimes tough and painful, and we're going to fall down. So I think it's really looking to the Buddha within, to really cultivate that sense of self-trust and awareness. And then based on the fact that we are going to make mistakes, then look to people outside that can help us on our journey. So somebody might come to me or you and say, hey, help me with my business. I don't know what to do. And I'll say, well, show me what you've been doing. Like, well, I've just been reading all these books and I haven't done anything. I'm waiting till I get it perfect. And then I'll go start. Like, no. Like, show me something, and then we'll readjust. I love the quote, God can't steer a parked car. So we need to get moving, falling down, and then somebody can mentor you and, help you on your path a little bit. But I think it really comes back, and that's one of the biggest distinctions I've got for the last decade, is really listening to that voice within and knowing that sometimes it's not going to be right. My mind, my ego will get in the way. Something might be a little off, but I'm going to learn. And experience is the best teacher. And really, once the intention is pure and it's a refinement, because our own ego is going to get in the way. Other people's stuff is going to be placed upon us. But the more that we can be willing to go up that mountain, to fall and fail and go all the way down, but to look for truth and to look for what's useful. Because there are going to be some truths that we don't like. There's going to be some lessons that are hard lessons to take. But is this useful? And could I make this useful to helping others? So that pure knowledge is all the way on top of the mountain. And we can take our entire lives all the way upstream. And it could be down the mountain of somebody really smart, like an Elon Musk or Tim Ferriss or whoever, but we won't own it at the same level. We all need to make that journey. So outside of my rant, going back to that same theme about self-awareness, self-trust, and really listening to our own intuition, I would say, people like Tim Ferriss, obviously Tony, but even now as I'm creating a lot of my own content, not listening to any Tony. I haven't listened to any Tony really all year because I don't want that influence. And he's been already so influential to my life. So I have like a Tony detox.
Yeah, I get it.
So I think right now I've let very little in. I did read the Bhagavad Gita not too long ago. Jesse Elder is somebody that was coached and mentored a bit last year.
I love Jesse. He's great. Yeah.
His connection to source and his really awareness of meditation and his language patterns and things like that. I love taking people's videos and I'll send it off to somebody on Fiverr and I'll get it transcribed and I'll look at the questions and how they pause in certain ways and just little things they do that they're conscious of or not that make people so effective in their communication. Because as I alluded to earlier, it used to be that we could bully people around and get our way to influence the world, to spin our way like Thor's hammer into the ground and force this thing to turn our way. But it's not about that anymore. We can influence this world to spin a different way with our language. And people that can really captivate and inspire and entertain and draw people in, but be authentic in their heart. You know, it's like their mind is sharp, connected to their heart that is open and pure, and they've got some cojones attached to that thing coming out of their mouth. And they've got a little bit of technical this and that, you know, look out, the world is theirs. Yeah. And so, you know, Jesse has been somebody that I have invested I probably invested a couple hundred hours into really what he's done. I like who he is a lot. And I know a lot of these listeners out there, he's not, you know, famous like Tim Ferriss or Elon or any of these people, but he's got that kind of capacity, you know, for what he does. So it's worth just watching some of his videos, because he's just a traveling nomad talking.
Yeah. And he's a tribal leader too. Like, he doesn't have to be a Tony Robbins, because everybody who needs to know him knows him. And that's a key distinction too, is like, nowadays you don't have to be the Tony Robbins to influence the whole world. And that's a strategy that worked for Tony 20 years ago. And it's not invalid. It's just now you have a bigger platform than you realize to reach the right people. You don't need 1 million people, right, to make a movement happen. You can start it without grassroots with 1,000 or 10,000. Eli, I have to confess, I do the same thing when I listen to you talk, because you're so dialed in with your language and the words that you choose. And I find myself getting both enraptured at the same time, but then like also the spidey sense goes off. I'm like, oh, that's good. Write that down. And, you know, I'm always consistently trying to get better at communication, or getting better at communication. I want to flip the question back around on you. Is there anything that you've seen? Because I write content every day, read all my emails. And I really appreciate that, by the way. It means a lot that you do. I'm kind of in that place too, where I'm Bruce Leeing everything, where I'm trusting my own voice. Is there anything that you've noticed that I do, either consciously or unconsciously, that you find is either effective or really ineffective? And would you just break me down for a second and then kind of give the audience at home like an idea of what this means?
First of all, I'll say that I'm blown away by the amount of consistent, amazing content, because you, just like Jesse, you're on the road, you're traveling, you've got this amazing. And so people that get a sense of who you are before they interact with you, listen to something like this, they get a sense of who you are. And they see like, this is a cool guy who's actually not just talking about things, but he's traveling, he's connected to business people, he's got relationships, friendships, he's making some money. It's very, very cool. But the interesting thing about you and your background with the hedge fund and real estate and all the things you've done, you're able to systematize things so quickly. And, you know, you're always coming from a place of service, and this make more marbles thing is your gig, but it's not just been a thing. I met you, I guess, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's been at least 2 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like your new kind of thing. And I was like, oh, it's cool, but it's been consistent for you. And you've done it, you know, and you've gone to the Tony Robbins events, and I've seen you there, and you're just taking lots of notes. And I think, you know, you've done UPW several times, and you know, you were really grateful. I got you in there, and then you were like taking like tons of notes, and you're like, you know, really into it. So you play full out, you know, which I think it's really about it. There's no half-assing it with anything that you do. And I just admire that. I blocked almost everybody from my inbox. But, you know, I got your email today, the one about the computer simulation, and your emails are some of the few that I actually read. Most of them, I don't like get through anymore, because I got my own agendas. Sure. So yeah, I've seen, and it's like with anybody, the more consistent we are with anything, that we get better. But, you know, you got the Amazon thing that you're going to do. You got you went to the China, but you're setting your lifestyle up business-wise, and your friendships and all that, so they're mutually supportive. Where most people have, you know, they're this life and they got this life, you found a way to combine those aspects. So it's just, that's your world. And it's really inspiring to see that. You think, as far as, you know, what specific question do you have?
I just want to be, because I know like the heart's there, and what I'm doing is really important. Like, you know, not just making more marbles, but making more marble makers. And, you know, we don't have to grab for all the marbles. We can just make more. Is like, that's a mission. That's not because I want to make a bunch of money. I've already done that, and it didn't fulfill me. You know, my story with the hedge fund, $1 million+ in a month. And, you know, it just wasn't ever going to do it. So it came back to, you know, what can be the mission that I can create here in the world. And I look to guys like you as kind of leaders in a sense that I know that no matter what the technology, no matter what's the cool, hip, new gadget or app, that the message is what's going to win. You know, Sheree Alexander, another friend of ours, we took her course recently, has the same kind of ethos. It's like, if I can get my message perfect, it doesn't matter what channel I choose because we're going to dominate. It's not about the little hit, hacks and tricks and tips that are going to change. The mindset and the message really overtake all of that. And the distribution channels will continue to shift. But as long as that's dialed in and you can really work with people and really enroll people into a greater vision or future through thought leadership and speaking and just having conversations, then you can really own the narrative and therefore influence more people to, get out of their head, get out of their scarcity, get out of their fear, get out of whatever that is that's keeping them from shining their own light, and the world is a better place. So I'm always looking to guys like you, like I want to hire you to help train up my team, because I just know that these little 2mm shifts that we're doing good and we can be great or outstanding. And I know that, the world would be better for having seen our light. And it's not, again, coming from a place of ego. You said that earlier, like guys, anybody listening at home, you got to understand, like I could do a lot of things and make a lot of money. I really could. And I could just go in a room somewhere and just crank it out and be a super scarce idiot and not tell anybody about what I'm doing. But I want to believe in a world where I can do more for more people, give more than I've ever given before, and receive more. And it's not a mutually exclusive thing. We started to talk about that earlier. It's like, I feel like people have this sense of, I got to work really hard and make a lot of money, or I have to give back. Stop it. Stop that shit. I'm just going to say it unequivocally right now, because not only are you going to win less, you're also going to hate your life more if you're not coming from a place of growth and contribution. Simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. The important thing is, I started to allude to earlier, in order for your salespeople to be better, there's certain obviously scripts and language and all that, but in order for anybody to get better at anything they do, and this is, I refer back to Tony's tool, the Triad, that you're very familiar with, that piece, like if somebody just masters the Triad, if they really, really get it, there is nothing in your life there's nothing that you can't do. So the Triad, for everybody listening, is these. So we talk about our emotional states. People do things for emotional reasons and they justify it logically. So you need to be able to control basically the emotions of people, is starting with ourselves. So if people do things, buy our products, buy our services, join our community for some feeling, what are the feelings? Again, knowing our outcome, I need to be clear about what it is that I want, what it is clear that they want. And even inside of my nervous system, as I've done the pre-work, I have 1,000 times more reasons why they need to do what I'm going to ask them to do than I have for myself. Like if I want to sell somebody something, maybe I want to make money, or I want to be number one, or I want to get my message out in the world. But I think of yeah, of course it's good for me. I'll gain, but if they do it, it's that whole pain pleasure thing. They'll gain, they'll gain, they'll gain, they'll gain. And if they don't do it, they'll lose. Heaven if you do, hell if you don't. So that is in me. And so knowing my outcome of where I want to take this person, I take charge, but I do it with questions. And so whatever you ask people about, question, gets them to focus on something. So I want them to focus on what they do want and why they don't have it yet. So, asking people what's going on is something where people explain logically, but when you ask people why, then it brings up emotion. And it's like, well, why hasn't this happened? What's going on? But then why? Getting people emotional. And it's really understanding, because in the aspect of communication, conversation go 1,000 different ways, but questions always pull things back. And as you get more, skilled at it, you start to notice these patterns. And I'll bring this up, talking about postures, which is a whole nother thing. Superior posture, telling somebody to do something. Equal, you're like, hey, you're talking to his friends. Or inferior, where you might say, hey, I don't know. What do you think? Or the great thing about you is, where I go inferior and I pump somebody up. So changing postures, understanding the Triad, changing frames, changing roles. There's a lot to it. But I remember listening to an interview that Tony Robbins did as a younger man, where he was just forming a relationship with Jay Abraham. And Jay Abraham, if your listeners don't know, is a marketing genius. Amazing. But the worst interviewer and stage speaker I have ever seen in my life. I was at Business Rockstars a few years ago, and Ken Rotowski, he had to keep on interrupting him and just said, "Hey man, Jay, can you give us something of value? You were just freaking rambling through a live audience." And I've seen Jay speak many, many times. And now even at Tony's events, they have somebody on stage with Jay to ask him questions, and they get like an interview, because you can't just let him stand there by himself. He just rambles about nothing for so long. And so that's his pattern. I imagine Tony knew that before their interview, had done some kind of pre-talk or whatever. And so Tony knew his outcome in the interview, to get certain gold nuggets, to have him answer certain questions. And he asked him some question, and Jay starts to ramble. And so Tony interrupts and says, "Listen to me, Jay. Listen to me." That is a superior. He said it with the tone of voice like, "Shut the F up. Listen to me, Jay." Superior. And he says, "The great thing about you is inferior." So a strong pattern, and it's done so quick, interrupt the pattern. And then you talked about the stimulus response. So before the other person, because just like a magician, the hand moves faster than the eye. In language, we can say something because that's part of the prep. That's part of the conditioning. I know that if I'm going to say something really strong, I'm going to interrupt somebody. I know their automatic response. If I go superior, they're going to want to go superior back at me. So I immediately go inferior. "Hey, listen to me. The great thing about you is inferior." They're going to want to superior, but they can't hit me because I'm not there anymore. So I've automatically gone inferior. Like, what I really respect about what you've done is, but what we want to know is this. So that's a language of equal. How did you do this? So then taking with a new question, redirecting the focus. And so understanding the emotions of the triad of your client and of yourself. And so one of the things that I've done, understanding this triad: focus, language, physiology. Patterns of focus, where my mind goes; patterns of language, what I say; and patterns of physiology. So if somebody gives to me a stimulus called a no, or if somebody gives one of your sales guys a no, the client is in a certain pattern. They're focused on no. Their physiology is no. Their language is obviously no. And so how do you diffuse that? So you get this strong no. It's just a stimulus. It's just some information coming at your nervous system. But what most salespeople do when they get the stimulus of a no, they focus on the past. They focus on, I'm not going to eat. They focus on, they don't like me. They focus on, they have something. They have a pattern of language and meaning. They make it mean something about themselves. They make it mean God's punishing me. I'm stupid. They don't like me. They're never going to buy. And then their physiology tenses up. They get tense in their body, tense in their voice. So their triad is off. And they're letting that other person control them because their ego's gotten in the way. They're not realizing that communication is just energy. There's a flow of energy back and forth. And even things that are negative can happen to us in our life. And some people have something negative happen in their life, and they get tense and they trap that energy in their body. But when we're loose and we're doing yoga and we're flowing or dancing, going into that feminine energy, things flow through us. And so the no can just be information that comes through us. We process it in a way and we say, well, that's interesting. Can I ask you a question? And the person says, sure. Now that gives me about 2 seconds to think about what my question is going to be. But even that, can I ask you a question, can redirect their focus, and they say, sure, I get an agreement. Isn't it true? So there's something called a hierarchy of values. So if somebody says no, say, the product costs too much. I could see, so they have a belief that they can't do it because of some financial reason. But with the work that you did with Tony Robbins and Date with Destiny, he goes a lot into values. So there's a hierarchy of our values. We all appreciate things like love and health and success, financial gain, whatever. We've all got our list of values. Somebody says no because of the money, it's too expensive. And so I could make some hypothesis. And as an influencer, as a coach, as a leader, as a therapist, you're always making some hypothesis based on the information that you see. And so I can guess what this person's values are. If I've spent enough time with them, I'll be able to clearly know what they value most. I could look at part of the research is I might look at their Facebook and see they have pictures of themselves in front of fancy cars that they don't own, like a Bugatti or something, and they don't own it. They clearly value they've got some, they value significance, they value money, they value success. But if somebody says something like, I can't afford it, and I say, well, that's interesting. Can I ask you a question? And they'll say, yeah. I say, isn't it more important to think about the long-term care of your business and your family support and the future of your company than a small investment today? So I want them to really look at the values. So somebody might say something stopping them in their life, but they have a values criteria. They're valuing in this conversation money because they're focused on the money and they're focused on the pain of loss. But isn't it more important? Isn't it more important? So I'm going to think of something that they would value even more than monetary loss in the moment for long-term gain that affects their family, that affects their sense of contribution, their sense of purpose and meaning for their life. And obviously I've had a conversation with them up in this point before the close, but I will have drawn out some information to them that I'll say back to them about what's most important in their life. I'll say it back to them in their same exact language. It gets them tied to a value that is more important for the long-term gain of their life. Isn't it more important to realize this? Isn't it more important to do some things now that can set you up to have more of this? Because this success, this love, this long-term legacy for your life and your business, that is what you really want, isn't it? And isn't it is a tie down. That's it, isn't it? And what are they going to say? No. And so it's just helping people get to what they really want in life, because sometimes we get confused because we're so focused, and we've all got patterns of focusing on what's stopping us or what we can't do. And so you're just helping people realize that they can do it. And you're upgrading, like your mindset has to be one of like, I'm not taking from this person. I'm not taking money from them. I'm getting them to make a strong choice to upgrade their own reality. You can have an upgrade on your life, but it comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of you be willing to go up the mountain. And to get up the mountain, yeah, it's going to cost some money, but what is money? You can always make more money. You don't have more time. Yeah. Make more time. And so what I'm going to offer you is a Sherpa. I got a Sherpa here. A Sherpa is somebody that takes all your crap and takes it up the mountain for you. You're going up the mountain and they load all on there. I'm like, hey, you got a lot of crap weighing you down. I got a Sherpa here. This business opportunity is just a Sherpa. And so now what I'm doing is something called a metaphor. There's a lot of metaphors, and that just obviously happens naturally. But once you start to think about, well, how is that like this? How is this conversation like something else? So we learn through metaphors. Jesus talked in metaphors. We learn, but the better you get at metaphors, the more then you create, and the better you're able to just pull anything in your life from a metaphor. Well, that's a lot like this. And to get them to make that connection. And so you're always just in conversation with somebody, and there's a lot that you can do to take people out of the know and put them right back into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it's understanding the triad, understanding a lot of different things, but people realize, going back to the triad, focus, physiology, language, getting people to do things to change their state. And so if somebody's in a no state, you have to realize that there's a yes inside of them. There's a yes person inside of every no person, but they just got conditioned. And so as influencers, as leaders, we're just getting people to do things that are good for themselves. And we can change their pattern by changing what they're focused on. We can change their language by changing our language first and getting them to change their physiology. That's why at the Tony Robbins events, he has people jumping up and down so much. A Tony Robbins event would not be a Tony Robbins event if people were, just sitting there. It's one of the things at all of his events. He has, he lets them know that people are going to be moving around quite a bit. And I've seen, hundreds of his events now at this point, but how he gets into it. One of the things that he does, there's been, say, at a big convention, like 20 other speakers or National Achievers Conference, most people are like, I'm not doing that jumping up and down shit. Not me. I'm not doing that. But he gives people reasons. And he'll even go back. He says, we grew up in a 20th century school system where they told you to sit down and do what? That's right, shut up. So he's creating this frame of us versus them. You've been controlled your whole life. It's time for you to take your power back. They told you to sit down and shut up. But hey, in today's environment, if you're not talking to your neighbor in business, you're out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So talking, communicating, moving. So he's also saying, hey, pain, pain, pain. And the way you've been conditioned your whole life, let's break the conditioning. So you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah. So he's giving you reasons for your reasons. He's not just saying, hey, I want you to jump up and down for me because I told you to. Everything that you give somebody as a command to do is linked to a positive reason for them. And everybody's got their own past, their own trauma, their own bullshit. It's a little bit like therapy. You know, everybody's got parent issues. Not everybody, but most people do. They got relationship stuff. They got money stuff. And so getting people to tap into their own power, to do things for themselves, linked to a reason, something in the future that they see that can benefit them by getting them to do something now. Whether it's walk across fire, jump up and down, invest in your fund, invest in your thing, you know, or to buy your product, people need to feel like, yeah, I'm doing this for me. You know, this is like, I'm taking my power back, you know, and so you ask questions, getting people to just own themselves at a higher level. And so I think it's that awareness that just comes through. And, you know, I've obviously got no script with this stuff, but in the right moments, because I've looked at the language enough and I've spent enough time there, things just come out of you. It's hard for me to put myself into the state, but when I'm in it and I'm in front of a room or whatever, things just naturally come. It's like the Aikido that we talked about. Like this energy here means that I go here. You know, they come there, I go there.
Right. And it's unconscious at this point. You could just flow with it and you don't even have to be thinking about, oh, I got to do this and that. There's no response stimulus. It's just you condition yourself so many times with so many people, so many stages, so many opportunities around the world. Just right now in this interview, I can see you in flow, just like one thing after another thing after another thing. It's coming through you. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And that's why I haven't said anything. I just want to point out how grateful I am that you're sharing so much. And guys, if you're listening at home, oh my God, you have one of the most incredible opportunities right now to watch this video over and over and over again and take notes and transcribe or whatever you're going to do. It's live on Facebook. Please use the wisdom of this man. He is an incredible warrior for the greatest good on this planet, to influence, persuade, and lead people towards becoming leaders themselves, right? Don't make more marbles, make more marble makers, or both, right? But Eli, unfortunately, our time is quickly drawing to a close. Yeah. And I want to make sure that you have an opportunity, since you've given so much to us. I want to offer you as well. And I never tell people about this beforehand, but what we do here on the Make More Marbles podcast is that for anybody listening, if they have a connection, resource, opportunity, person, a system, I know systems are a pain point in your current life at the moment, and you'd always need more help. How could I or anybody listening help you to further your mission right now? And how can we give back to you, because you so graciously and generously given to us?
I don't know. I need to be a better receiver. That's something I've realized for myself with a lot of the coaching I've had in the last year. I'm not in the best receiver. I've received a lot in my life, you know, as you know, for everything from mom winning the lottery to just a boatload of stuff. But I'm continuing to be blessed. So I already feel like I'm in such a state, but I do need to start asking for more and being more clear about what it is I want. So let me think. I'm in the process of launching my own course. A lot of this stuff, you know, I've always wondered how Tony and other people are so powerful with their language, how they're able to get people. So to do these things that seem like, how did that happen? Breaking it down. So I'm going to eventually do a course that we do Facebook ads and sell. It's going to be a Facebook ad, webinar, sell, $5,000 like course with a group coaching component. But I'm looking for the first phase of it. I'm going to launch towards the end of this week or beginning of the next week. So I've just been seeding things on Facebook. I'm going to launch a course that teaches all this stuff. And I won't be able to have too many people in it. And I'm going to charge a lot less than when I'm going to charge $5,000, similar model to AJ and all these guys, where you have a course for 90 days, group coaching, all that. But this is going to be a bit more hands-on. It's going to be a lot of my time, but I need to make sure that the right people are in there. I'm probably going to say no to a lot of people because I need to make sure that people can get an awesome result. One of the reasons I'm doing it and making it super duper affordable is so that everybody can give me an awesome testimonial. And so that's it. People know people that want to basically master their world by mastering their language and really understand. So the levels of influence are influence one to many.
Oh, we got a little bit of a bandwidth issue on your end, brother. Might be.
with the website. For a little. Doesn't everything up is out there. Still
yeah,
there?
we're back now. Oh, yeah, sorry, we missed a few sentences, but we actually came back just now, so we should be good.
Nice. So yeah, just get my stuff out there. I'm a bit clueless, but I'm opening myself up to receive. But yeah, I want to create this first wave of it will be me hands-on teaching a lot of people, making sure everybody gets really good results. And then the next phase will be less of my personal time. I'm going to record all the sessions and make that the actual course that I sell for much, much more. So now it's just an opportunity to get like hands-on work with me, small group of people, give me an awesome testimonial. They will have to pay something to be in it. I lowered the price to be as minimal as it can be. We're still making people feel like they've invested in it, because when you do something for too little, I've even made this mistake of not paying enough for things and not getting anything out of it. So making it super affordable. So if they know people that that's great. Or if they can help me set things up to get this out to the world, that would be super duper awesome.
Yeah. So you're talking about massive opportunities to just surround yourself, and proximity is power, with one of the best known incredible men on the planet to learn from and to grow with, and to help him, because he's a star, right? We talk about wealth dynamics all the time. You're obviously a star. If you haven't taken the test, please do, just to confirm it. But if you're not a star, I don't know who is. Let's just put it that way.
I'm pure. I've taken it. Yeah.
Yeah. You are a star, right? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tony is a star. You're a star, and stars, they shine bright, and that's all they should do. And then they need a deal maker and a lord, the people on the back end, to really make the deals and to make, the market, to bring those people in at the right time. And then also to make sure that all of this beautiful creation that he's creating is captured and then systematized and multiplied, if you will, through a function of systems. So any of you deal makers and lords talking right now, I'm constantly, every time I talk to Eli, I'm always kind of nudging him just slightly, like, these are the things you could be doing. I've backed off of that for the reasons that now I know his profile better, and I understand how to do that. I have to step out of my own star quality, because we're right next to each other, right? He's a star, I'm a supporter. I can go star, but I can't do it around Eli, because you'll recognize that when a real star shows up, back off, right? Retreat a little bit, be the supporter, be the deal maker. And that's the best way to serve somebody, like a Ryan, my client, like Julie, who I just had the pleasure to spend a day with on Friday. And these are the real stars that you need to shine bright, but I can support them and connect the dots to the marketplace. That is the next phase of wealth creation. And that's such an important thing to understand, guys. When you know who you are and you're shining bright or doing your thing as your type, then the world starts to open up for you in ways that you never anticipated. And that's the message that I want to leave you with. Eli, how can people get in touch with you best right now if they're interested in your programs, if they're interested in learning more about you? Where should they go?
Just Facebook. I need to get some of my sites and funnels. I'm very archaic with a lot of things. And, working for Tony for so long, so many people have tried to connect with me. I've actually been somebody like not wanting to get myself out there. I get asked to do, whether it's a podcast or for coaching. I've been inundated for years, and my mission was just to serve that mission for so long. So I've made it very hard for me to get, for people to connect with me. My website, I've really not done much with, but just Facebook at this point. And I'm in the process of getting everything dialed in. And
you are Eli Wilde on Facebook. So
I even changed my name on there because so many people are reaching out to me. So I may have made it very hard to get in touch with me.
WILDE, and you can follow him on there. Please forgive him in advance if he's too busy to respond to every request, but it's nice to know that you're out there listening.
I'll respond now. So I'm
okay, right on.
This is my station right now.
I love it. Battle stations, all hands on deck, all systems go. I love to hear it. I do have to jump. It's been an absolute pleasure, Eli. We'd love to have you on again at some point if you're open to it. And I know I've seen the comments, like everybody's blown away by this, and I know a lot of people are going to watch. So if you've gotten any value out of this at all, you just ask, from a place of contribution, so more people can see this, that you like, that you comment, that you share with your tribes. We're going to be sending it out to email and make sure everybody gets a chance to look at this, because this is literally one of the more important things in the world today is how do you get your message out there? How do you help more people? How do you get that leverage? And it starts with the message. It starts with the way you communicate. So, you got the best in the world right here, guys. Utilize this information and master it. I love you, Eli. Thank you, brother, for being on this, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Awesome. See you, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Make More Marbles podcast. For more tips, hacks, and strategies to create an amazing, abundant life in your health, wealth, and relationships, whatever that means to you, head on over to makemoremarbles.com. Check out our cool explainer video about what we're about, and join our community of entrepreneurial game changers. We want to help you level up your life in every possible way. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and please do leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.